So, within my coaching practice, one of the things that I often coach people with is the difficulties of breakups. So, I typically have clients that are really struggling with a breakup, or often asked my advice, what you should do in a breakup. And one of the things I always talk about, and this is male or female, especially if there's no children involved, but even if there is children involved, keep contact to a minimum. And I mean this. If you don't have any children involved, just ignore. Just cut them out of your life. And one of the things that happens that I see often is people start explaining to me what's going on with their ex and what their ex is doing and what their ex is saying, because they're still part of their life. And this makes the breakup even more difficult. You are effectively drip feeding yourself poison. And there's some reasons why this happens. One of them is you were once two people focused on what you were doing together and where you were going in your lives. Well, now one of you has changed their point of view, but you're still focused on that other person and the life you're supposed to have with them and the life that you wanted with them and where that life was going. And you want to understand what happened, how it happened, and why it happened. And in part, you want to do this because you want them back. You want the pain to stop. And deep down, somewhere inside, you think they're the solution and the answer. And they once were, they really were. But they're not now because they've changed their point of view. Their perception of the relationship, their perception of you, their perception of their future has changed. So they will go into a sort of action where they try and justify what's happened and why they've broken up with you. And they'll do it in one of two ways, typically. They'll demonstrate how it's your fault. They'll blame you. Talk about how you didn't support them, how you didn't help them, how you put them down. They'll talk about your habits, your behaviours. I don't love you anymore. I do love you, but I don't love you like that. Or the other way is they'll talk about what they wanted from their life and you weren't able to give it to them. And they start talking about, the example is always, I still love you, but I don't love you like that. Which is basically saying, I'm no longer physically attracted to you. I'm no longer emotionally stimulated by you. And it's just a very sophisticated way of trying to say, I don't like you anymore. You don't turn me on. I don't desire you. And the reason that this is an issue for you, the person on the receiving end, when you start engaging in these conversations and these topics with them, is because their point of view is either putting you down or trying to justify their decision, their choice. You're the one that's hurting. You're the one that's received the blow. But I am going to justify it to you in such a way that if you don't approve of what I've done, well, then you're a horrible person. You're not the right fit for me, and I've broken your heart. I might have been deceitful. I might have made promises I've no longer kept. But I'm going to flip it around in such a way that if you don't support my decision, and if you're not happy for me, you're a piece of shit. And this is why you have to be careful. Because you are the one who's in pain. You are the one that's hurting. And you are the one that doesn't understand what happened. So you kind of end up in this cognitive dissidence. And and the meaning of that is, despite the evidence, you still believe something else. And when you're still engaged with these people in conversation, when you're still engaged in meeting them, texting and messaging, you've got a cognitive dissonance going on. And that is, despite the evidence, you believe something else. You believe it can be salvaged. You believe they still want you. You believe they're the one. They're your soulmate. You believe you can still be friends. And this is why you've got to cut ties. Zero contact. And again, I will stress, for those of you that have children or are married, there's complications and legalities. And with children, it's massively complicated. And when you have children, all you can do is focus on them, not personal interactions with your ex. Because one of the things that you're going through is you had a perception of this relationship, where it was going and what it was about, and its meaning. And that meaning was an integral part of your identity. And now it's gone. And despite the evidence, your brain believes something else. You want it to be something else, and you don't understand what's happened or why it's happened. It's not possible for you to understand, because it doesn't fit your point of view. People can't change the belief of your reality. It's no point me saying there's plenty more fish in the sea, because it doesn't feel like that. That's not your reality. There's 7 billion people on this planet. Of course, there must be someone else out there for you. But that's not your reality. That only helps when you're down the line somewhere else. Months, years, who knows? And one of the things that happens is your brain is trying to fix the problem. And the solution to the problem is to rewind time and go back to before they broke up with you. Or in this case, well, we'll figure it out. It doesn't have to be this way. What can I do to get you back? And you can't. Because you're now a square peg and they're a round hole. You're not a perfect fit anymore. You're not the pieces of the same jigsaw puzzle. And this is what you have to protect yourself from, because the other person has moved on. They've got on with their life. You are not the consideration that you think you are. You're no longer as important to them. And all they'll be doing now is either feeding you lip service or using you to feel good about themselves, easing their guilt. And by the way, as harsh and as hard as it is, if somebody is unhappy in a relationship, they shouldn't be with you. That's happened to all of us. But it doesn't make it easier for you. And you have to allow some time for self-preservation to kick in. And sometimes we as human beings, when we hurt, when we're in a bad place, we are the most self-sabotaging people, species out there. And we will hurt ourselves deeply trying to maintain a connection with the very person that's caused the wound. And you are literally bleeding your self-esteem. You are bleeding your self-worth. You are just a walking vulnerable wound. I'm not sure how else to describe it. You are in a pain that is actually indescribable. And you will sabotage yourself and try and cling on to that person. You're desperate for an ounce of hope that tells you tomorrow is a good idea to wake up. And they may be the solution. And you will convince yourself of that. And they're just not. And it just isn't the right way. And I fully understand how hard that is. You have to cut ties. You have to have clean breaks. You, unfortunately, have to deal with this in the now, in the reality, and do what is best for you long term. Please let me know your thoughts. Share your experiences with other people. You'll be amazed how helpful it is. But thank you for listening.